chapter clicked in to College Volleyball Weekly on Viral Volley Media. Now here's your host, Rob on mic.
Good day, everyone, and welcome to another episode of College Volleyball Weekly Men's Top 20. This is episode 254. Gotta remember that. Week 7 recap, Week 8 preview. Got Brad Rothschild of UC San Diego, Theo Edwards of CSUN, and Jay Hosick of George Mason, Dan Friend of Lewis. Thanks again, gentlemen, for popping on in for another fun week of men's D1-2 volleyball. I figured I'd start this. I didn't get to share this with you guys when we first jumped on, but there's definitely first in the program. And I had a first yesterday. I was sitting in church. Guy taps me on the shoulder, says, "Are you Rob of College Volleyball Weekly?"
Nice. Living legend. I thought you were going to say it was a first yesterday you were at church. I was going to laugh a little bit,
but well, shout out to Jerome. Apparently he was a former player at Concordia University, or rebranded as CUI. So appreciate you listening. He enjoys the show. So I was happy to get that, but worship was starting, so we couldn't talk ball after that. So but in any case, a very, very active week with a lot of action in week 7. So I want to jump right into it. With it being Valentine's Day and everything, it was going to be 5 sets in or upset city, but instead we're going to call it heartbreaks and hyped fivers. So some great ball going on this last week. Let's start off with on February 12th, 5-setter McKendree and Lindenwood. Dan, your home conference. I want to get your take on it first, and then I'll let the other guys jump in.
Yeah, I mean, I watched that match, or the back half of it, and Lindenwood kind of they were out without Ian Schuler, which is their starting opposite all conference kid. It's a pretty good player. And McKendree came in on opposing plays, usually a big rivalry match for them, and looked pretty good as they continue to do. But I thought Lindenwood found some ground with their outside and started putting some pressure on them, and ultimately pushed it to a 5th game. And but McKendree was steady through that 5th game, and Lindenwood made a few errors. And we'll probably be talking about McKendree again here in a little bit, but and we saw him firsthand. But she's got her kids playing really well. Nikki does, and it's a solid core group, and a couple older guys on that team that are really good, and they just ball control well and keep putting it on you and put a ton of pressure on you. So,
all right, Brad, thoughts on the McKendree Lindenwood?
Yeah, I mean, looking at McKendree Lindenwood, and then also kind of highlighting to what Dan alluded to in their win over Loyola in 5-2. Both of those matches, their opponents hit about 100 points higher than them combined, and they still ended up winning in 5. And I think that's a testament to just the defense, the ball control, their ability to just limit their errors, and that's goes a long way in those 5th sets for sure.
All right, Jay, your take on that matchup.
I won't just talk about the match. I'll talk about the conference itself. I mean, you're seeing across the country, conference tournaments are going to be gnarly because there's going to be a lot of teams that could be really hot at any given moment. Right now, McKendree's the hot team in the country. They're doing some really nice things. And that win against Loyola at home, Loyola was undefeated, no mo. And it's one of those things that, as we get down the line here, teams are going to look back and bring this experience with them, and they're going to be able to know that they can handle the moment in any situation. So kudos to Nikki and her crew. They're doing a nice thing right now, and see if they can keep it rolling this week.
And let's jump over to Theo's take.
Yeah, I mean, I think these guys hit it on the head pretty good. I think Nikki and McKendree they're playing really, really well right now. And we kind of got some hint of that, right? Like even early in the year, they were challenged and they had a really tough schedule and they took a couple of L's, but I think that, in the long run, it's really paying off for them in terms of their experience and their ability to kind of work through it and get better. And obviously they had a win over Lewis last week or a week and a half ago. And it wasn't a fluke thing. Like, this team is really, really talented, and Hoskin is really playing incredibly well right now. And obviously we're going to talk about the Loyola win, but yeah, this one over Lindenwood, I mean, was well fought, and they're playing some good ball.
I'm trying to remember who picked Nathan Flater as their baller of the week this last week, because boy was playing. He's orchestrating a great offense. So kudos to whoever picked him, because I paid more attention to what he's doing this week. But let's go to our next 5-setter. We're going to skip actually one because they follow in another category we're going to talk about. But upset 5-setter number 2, and we're going to save Dan for last because it's a Valentine's Day upset of Ball State. So he was playing heartbreaker to Coach Donan, but we'll get his take. We'll start with Brad on this one.
Yeah, that game was kind of funky and like lopsided sets, but when it came down to it, I just thought Lewis was able to find ways to get some more kills. Max Rocky again, a lot of timely kills, and then the opposite, who you ended up subbing in, Dan.
Cameron Hoyne, yeah.
Hoyne, yeah, he took some really big swings, especially out of the back row in some tough situations that really kind of what I thought won the fifth set for them. But I thought it was pretty good volleyball throughout late in those sets, especially in the fourth and fifth there. It led to lots of good playing on both sides.
Jump over to Jay.
I'm going to comment on playing inside Worthen Arena. That place is not an easy place to play. There's you look at Dan's gym compared to that one. Dan's gym's got a lot of sight lines and things that you can use to your advantage because you're used to it. But you get in Worthen Arena, and that place is just a deep cavern, and there's not a lot of good sight lines in there. So hats off to them to go in there and play in that gym. And I'm sure it was pretty packed. Ball State does a nice job marketing their program, and it's a good win for Dan. And again, Ball State probably was the favorite on paper, but not in that conference right now. And it's anybody's game, and it just makes it really, really exciting to watch.
Yep. Theo, your take.
Yeah, it's funny that Jay was talking about the arena, because I was thinking the same thing, man. Going into that place is a tough place to play. And I remember we had traveled there, I don't know, roughly 8 or 9 years ago. And one of the game ops people that was giving us a tour of the facilities goes, yeah, our coach has a 98% challenge win percentage. Thinking to myself, how's that even possible? I was like, wait, hold on here. But anyways, I think it's a tough place to play. And watching the match, I thought it felt like a boxing match, man. And it felt like there was a time that Lewis was doing the rope-a-dope, man. It was 20-7 at one time, and they're taking blows, and every time they would come out to the next set, they were fired up and ready to rock and roll. And I felt like they started hammering the ball from the service line, and you started to watch Ball State lose a little bit of confidence. And obviously, Tanashi not being out there, and it was a little bit of a different lineup for them. But you could see the confidence start to wear. And as Lewis would get back to the service line, it felt like they were really dialed in on what they were doing. And they put a ton of pressure on Ball State and then capitalized when they made the mistakes. So it was a great win for Lewis, and super excited for him and his team.
We'll go to Dan, but mind you, that was a second of 2. Ball State took set night 1, 3-1, and then a great bounce back match for you, Dan. But go ahead and talk about your team and how you got it done on Valentine's Day to play heartbreaker, as Pat Benatar would say.
Well, I think, like, you're talking about sight lines. Now that they have Terraflex, there's even less sight lines, because Terraflex doesn't have any lines on it at all. And so I think, always a challenging place to play, and they've got a phenomenal team, and there were a lot of good battles in those games back and forth. And then ultimately, we won the serve pass battle right at the end. I think we ended with 9 aces, 12 errors or something like that. Like, we were pretty good from the service line, and had those aces at some optimal times, because really from a statistical standpoint, they outstatted us across the board in most statistical categories. And so, but yeah, good points at good times, and our guys not giving up put us in a position to get a win. But the conference is tough. I think every night we're going to go play a conference game, and you got to make sure you put yourself in a good position, and you don't take anybody lightly at any time, and you just kind of focus in on that. But anytime you can get a road, shoot, any win right now, I'll take. What are we talking about? Road win, home win, it don't matter. So just trying to put a win in the basket. So
Well, two guys have been really delivering for you offensively, and that's Ogujan and Max. They've been really elevating their play, particularly in the last couple weeks, I'd say, because I look at these stats at the end of the night, and these they kind of sneak up on you, but they're doing their thing, Dan.
yeah. Well, and the camera going in for OG, it was just a feel, just trying to bring something different. And I didn't know Cameron was going to get 4 aces. It was pretty nice. You know what I mean? So I guess I'm pretty smart that night. I don't know.
I think you got to give a little
pill.
credit. I think you got to give a little credit to his setter as well. He's distributing the rock in really, critical situations to the right people at the right times. He's doing a nice job.
Yeah, I think Tyler's kind of stepped up his game, which is important for us. You know what I mean? So,
Well, let's jump to our next 5-setter and BYU on another Valentine's Day hype fiver. Was at Concordia, or sorry, CUI. Gotta get used to that. And Makua Rothman or Matamoto Rothman went off, but BYU in the end too strong. Let's start with we'll go back to Jay on this one.
I think you could talk about Mix Romanis finally coming back into the lineup and doing some nice things. He had a good night performance there, and CUI is one of those teams that if you're not paying attention to them, it's not that you overlook them, but maybe you're not putting as much onus on how good they can play, and they're just getting better and better every week. And that MPSF tournament, I know you got the usual suspects, like Pepperdine and UCLA, but Concordia could do some things. Grand Canyon could do some things still. They're really, really strong. I wouldn't, and Stanford. I mean, let's not forget Stanford, that conference as well. I mean, you look at the MIVA, the EIVA, MPSF, man, it is going to be an absolute dogfight when the tournament comes around.
All right, go Theo on this one here. BYU at CUI.
Yeah, it was interesting. Looking at the stats and kind of evaluating what happened here. I thought that CUI did a fantastic job against Luke Benson, especially in that 5-setter. I think they held him to 056. On 18 swings, he only had 7 kills, and I thought defensively they were super scrappy. They really did a good job. They put a ton of pressure on him, and I think from attacking perspective, it was pretty even most of the match. I think both teams hit around 280, and I thought passing wise, I felt like Concordia wasn't quite as good. CUI wasn't quite as good as BYU, but they did a good job of handling some of those out of system situations and just super scrappy in a dogfight. And BYU, I thought got lucky squeaking this one out. Concordia was chomping at the bit to get a W.
Yeah, and then go over to Dan.
yeah, I think with Jay, I think conference tournaments, these are just confidence builders for Concordia. I mean, they got a good group and showing how competitive they are. And BYU snuck out of there just in terms of not getting that win for Concordia. Do you know what I mean? But it'll be exciting to see as teams kind of continue to battle. And I think Concordia is going to upset somebody. We'll just kind of see where it is as they get into conference play.
About a week out. Let's close it out with Brad on the BYU at CUI.
Yeah, this weekend of matches for Concordia and BYU are on the list of things to be watching more closely as we go up to Concordia on Saturday. But for us, it's looking at it. It was, like Theo mentioned, the serve and pass battle. BYU won, and I think that's ultimately what helped them. But I think the impressive piece is the attackers, the pin attackers for Concordia, with not being in system too often, to be able to be hitting at such a high clip and such a high rate with Galapo and Marimoto was impressive showing against BYU, which obviously is historically a pretty strong blocking team. So I think, the more they're able to be terminal and be effective out of system bodes well for them having more and more success and getting some of these upsets you guys are talking about down the road.
Well, that's the only, was it 5 of 8 that we have talked about that have gone 5-set or a hyped 5-setter. Let's go to our next one. Another one in the MIVA. Something's happened in the MIVA. You've got McKendree again coming up and then defeating Loyola, 7th ranked Loyola. Instead of going to the home conference person, let's go to let's go to a Big West person to get the outside view. Theo.
Yeah, sure. I mean, wow, this was I think this was probably their biggest win of the year for McKendree, and not by much of a surprise in the sense that this team is I mean, they're firing on all cylinders. I think if you look at them, you match them up against Loyola person for person. They're not that much smaller than them. They're a big team. They ball control incredibly well. I felt like there were some moments there where Loyola was really leaning heavily on Parker Van Buren, as they should, and he was incredibly talented and kind of similar to Lewis's match over Ball State. Really, when McKendree needed them, they got them. And when they needed the points that it took to win the game, they got them. And down the stretch of that fifth set, I think there was a misconnect by Parker and the setter, and kind of a miscommunication of where he thought the ball was going to end up. And they ended up free balling to McKendree. And every time they gave McKendree an open door, they walked through it and took advantage of it. So, man, I give an absolute so much credit to Nikki and what she's doing with her team. But again, I go back to the beginning of the year, some of the losses that they took and some of the tough situations that they were put in. I think they're starting to pay off now, and this team is starting to gain some confidence and have a few really big wins underneath their belt. And it's kind of sky's the limit for them moving forward. The conference tournament is going to be insane.
Dan's loving every bit of that. But let's go to Jay before we go to Brad, and then finally close out with Dan.
I think you look at the service errors, right, where they have at the end there 31 service errors, something like that.
31.
31. That's a lot in a 5-set match. It's averaging 6 per. And, I think any coach will tell you, if you're siding out at a really high clip, 70% plus, and the other team, you're knocking them off the net, but you're taking a few lumps because you're having some errors. I think coaches would be not okay, but we'll deal with 6 per, but the side out percentage was not as high. And now you add on top of that the fact that McKendree plays really good defense. They're scrappy as all get out. And then you take the consideration that McKendree is just putting pressure on you left and right. I think the service errors in the end is probably what got Loyola. The other thing to talk about, when you have a team that is undefeated and every match you win, you get more and more pressure on top, and it becomes tougher and tougher to deal with. Some teams are just really good at dealing with it. Some teams are just really athletic and just outpowering teams. But when you have a team that is athletic, but maybe doesn't have any history of feeling this kind of pressure, sometimes it can be a little bit much. And I think maybe they tried to do things that extended them a little bit more than they were comfortable with. But, hats off to McKendree. It's not that Loyola lost the match. McKendree earned that match, and Theo nailed it. They some experienced teams this year, they may have gone out early on in the year and gotten some losses, but what they're learning from those losses, what they're learning down the line is how to play the game at a higher level for longer strings of time. And that's what McKendree's doing right now. And so I give more credit to McKendree than I do to Loyola losing it.
Yep. Brad.
Yeah, I think they hit on the service errors. It stands out, especially when you look at McKendree, which historically is more of a serving in team. And like everyone has talked about, play great defense and really defend well. And I think Nikos, sorry, Nikos, I'm probably not going to get the last name right.
Zadakis is what I tried.
But their opposite, who's really been coming along and getting more and more terminal. But look at him having 11 digs, and double-digit digs is huge to get out of the right side blocker. So you see that. And then you pair it with Loyola's offense. They had about 150 attempts, 147, and 100 of those attempts went to Parker Van Buren or to Fabikovich. That's more than 2/3 of their offense is going to those two guys. And when you see for 100 swings, you're seeing 2 to 3 blockers, it's really hard over the course of a 5-set match to be putting away big swings and big moments. Those two guys are still pretty good and still find plenty of times where they're getting those kills. But it adds up when you're playing a team that's serving in and defending so consistently, to where it opens the door for you to really kind of fall in this position with those service errors and a good, strong team on the other side of the net. And boom, that's an upset. And I speak firsthand, especially knowing that, one of our matches this week cost us was a large part of due to our service errors. So yeah, it can happen where you play better in every other phase except for serving, and it can cost you.
Wow. And close out, Dan.
Yeah, I think Brad hit it. I mean, both right side defenders, found ways to get doubles. Nikos in his kills and his dig, Nathan's in assists and his digs, and pretty key. We were talking about Flater before, but it's pretty impressive by them. And ultimately, yeah, Loyola, that Loyola was playing fantastic, but it's a long season, so you knew they were going to run into one of the teams in conference, and McKendree happened to be the team that was certainly playing well at the time. And so kudos to those guys. But McKendree's not a shock and shouldn't be to anybody over the past 4 or 5 years. Do you know what I mean? Nikki's had that program playing at an elite level, competing with every team they walk into, no matter what they're ranked at. I think the challenge for this program and group is, do we see them take the next step? And we won't know until later in the season, but can they make that MIVA final and put themselves in that position? And this group is certainly talented enough to do it. And then how will they progress and how will they learn as the season goes on with some of the other tough conference matches? And that'll be kind of the next step for this group. Shuli's a senior and All-American. You got the opposite. Nikos is a senior. Their libero is a junior. Like, their middle is a senior. Like, they've got this group that's poised to be pretty good. And so it'll be interesting how we're talking about them as we get towards the end of the year.
Well, the MIVA, if history is any indicator, it's usually one, maybe two teams at the top and a humongous log jam in the middle. And then you guys are sitting there going set for set, point for point ratio, common opponents when you get to tiebreakers. So we shouldn't expect anything less this year, is what it's beginning to shape out to be.
And isn't the fourth tiebreaker like rock, paper, scissors, best of 77 series?
Flip of a coin.
Well, and the thing to keep in mind also, when we get to tournament time, every loss is going to be magnified, because the people don't understand, the top teams are going to beat each other up, and it is what it is. It's that 4th or 5th or 6th place team in the conference that, if you sleep or hit a speed bump and they take one from you, that could come back later on down the line and haunt you a little bit and sting you. So it's going to be a lot of fun. There's a lot of teams that can play spoiler later on in the year.
Yep. All right. This is the 5-setter that I probably had the least information on, because I'm not familiar with one of the teams, but I believe a bunch of you guys are. You've known the coach for a few years, and I saw this on my feed. I'm like, whoa. On the 15th, on Saturday, a 5-setter, not only a 5-setter, but an upset, and an NAIA team defeating a D12 team. That was the Masters University defeating number 8 Stanford. And with that, I believe I'm going to go to Jay first on this one, and then we'll go from there.
Look, I'm not going to comment on the match too much. I didn't see much of it, but if you're sleeping on the Masters, you're not watching volleyball the right way. They are a good team. Jared does a really nice job with that program. He's got good players. They're experienced. They're fearless. They go into any gym. And when you're an NAIA school and you go into a top Division I, well-known program, you're going in with a chip on your shoulder, and you want to show them you can compete with the big boys. They remind me a lot, and these coaches here will understand this, they remind me a lot of Cal Baptist before they became big. Cal Baptist, for a long time when they first started, was kind of a program that, it is what it is, a little school in Riverside. Nobody really paid them much attention. All of a sudden, within a few years, they were beating teams like Long Beach State. They were beating UOP. They were beating some other big programs. They had some scholarship money, so they were able to get a few more players. But hey, listen, in today's day and age, scholarship money now, it's almost even across the board. So I give Jared a lot of credit for that win. That's a great win inside, Stanford's home house. I'm not surprised, maybe a little shocked, but not very much. It's a team that should be reckoned with, and Stanford, just didn't perform at the right moments for long enough periods of time. But hats off to Jared.
Jump over to Brad. His thoughts on the Masters at Stanford.
Yeah, I think like Jay touched on a little bit, but Jared's in a really interesting spot here at the Masters, just with being an NAIA school and understanding the landscape of NAIA a little bit more, and specifically on the West Coast, is they've lost their top competition. Vanguard and Menlo was the top competition that the Masters was playing. And Jared's done a great job of managing that by, he came down and played us in the fall. They play in all the fall tournaments with all the other major schools. And what that does is it gets NAI program or a smaller program really familiar and really comfortable with competing with some different names and some bigger name schools. And that prepares them for the moments like they had this weekend where they ended up going up there and winning in 5 and playing really, really well. And I think Max McCall is the middle that they have from Concordia, who was a graduate transfer up there. Matthew Ham's a young setter who's a little undersized, but does a great job of running a good offense. And then you got Braden Van Groningen, who I actually coached his cousin as well. Van Groningen Farms, the best watermelons in California. Shout out. But
NIL deal.
Been an amazing development, and his growth as a volleyball player and as an outside hitter has been really impressive and cool to see. And he took a couple swings in the fall against us up and over some of our bigger and better blockers and had some 65+ mile-per-hour serves. So they got some guys playing good volleyball, and they're definitely going to be in the mix for the NAI National Championship this year.
Dan.
Yeah, I think people should know that there's always the crossover that the top of the NAI or the top of Division II or the top of D3, like you look at women's volleyball, those top programs can beat some mid-majors and things like that. We see it in a top 2 basketball team can go compete mid-major wise with another basketball team. It's just, there's always that crossover, phenomenal athletes. And so it's no surprise. And we all know Jared and the way he runs his program. And even if Stanford didn't quite have all their pieces, it's a great win for Masters and a nice notch in their belt. And then Stanford will be fine. They'll recover from it and bounce back. And they're a talented group, and you'll see them certainly put their best foot forward in the next match in terms of that.
Yeah. All right, Theo, close us out.
Yeah, I thought I thought the Masters obviously did a fantastic job, and kind of these guys kind of hit it on the head. Brad was talking about it. One of the things that Jared has done such a great job of is just understanding the landscape of the NAIA and capitalizing on players that he can get and that he can leverage. And I mean, he's put together year after year some fantastic rosters that have been incredibly competitive and have beaten a lot of Division I teams. Like, this is not the first time that they've been able to do it. A lot of teams actually have started to play them as exhibitions rather than counted matches because of this exact situation. They're good. And I think there was 2 years ago where we played them, and they had a couple of guys that graduated from PEP, a couple of guys that graduated from Santa Barbara. I mean, it was a legit team full of some really experienced athletes. And yeah, so I'm not surprised, and then I looking at Stanford, I thought Stanford actually played pretty well. This was a slugfest, both teams hitting over 300, but Stanford missed like 30 serves. And anytime you miss that many, it's definitely going to open the door for the other team and give them some opportunities. And, this team's no slouch, and Masters did a great job.
Yeah. Just want to point out a notable name from the Masters. That would be Nolan Flexen, AVCA and NAIA Player of the Year in 2023. Also the Freshman of the Year, first team All-American. So there are definitely some little gold nuggets that you can find in D3 NAIA. Just tapping into them, and they will give teams a very good run for their money. Our final, well, not really our final, but at least in our segment on 5 setters, we had a series between someone on the team. That would be Brad's UC San Diego Tritons. They're in Phoenix against number 10 Grand Canyon. Talk about the entire series and then that 5-setter, because that was a brawl in that second match.
Yeah, it was night 1 was really funky, really weird. Similar to some of the matches we alluded to, is we were a little bit cleaner in just about every single category except for serving. We had no aces, and I believe 22 or 23 service errors. And other than that, we were a little bit stronger everywhere else. But that obviously hurts you big time over the course of a match, and against a team that's really good, it makes you pay for those things. So we really had a weird, funky taste in our mouth leaving the gym that night, and then bouncing into night 2. It was just a really good battle, going back and forth, and we came out early, did some really good things, and then Grand Canyon responded and made some tweaks with their offense, made some tweaks with a couple players, and and ultimately Jared Anderson offensively was pretty darn consistent. another Division III Player of the Year, and that's now playing at the Division I level. And then Carter Rogers from the end line, who's been serving sub for them for the last few years, and now their outside hitter, put some pace and put some pressure on us, specifically early in some sets that ended up being the difference maker for us.
Jay, the San Diego GCU series.
Yeah, I think, we talk about every team out there that has some victories. You've got one really, really strong player that stands out. And I think for San Diego this weekend, Cheerfan, their opposite's doing a really nice job. I think on Saturday, going up into that fifth set, I thought he put up some big swings and some big blocks. And unfortunately, I think he missed a couple in the fifth that may have been critical misses at the wrong time. But then San Diego went in there and just ready to battle. And Jared Anderson, yeah, I mean, Springfield, All-American and Player of the Year. This is kind of his welcome back party because he was out for a little bit with an injury, and now he comes back. And his first night, I think he had like 200, but man, the second night he hit 474. That's pretty good. So, it's just a testament to these teams. Serving seems to be the Achilles heel for teams that may come out on the losing side of some matches, and it's not because they're not serving aggressive. It's that they're just missing at the wrong times. Missing early in a longer set doesn't sting you quite as much. But in the red zone, man, when you're going 20 all and you're in a set that matters and you miss a couple of key serves at wrong times, that could really come back and bite you.
Yeah. Theo.
Yeah, I watched both these matches, and yeah, I think Brad kind of nailed it in the first one. The serving just wasn't there for San Diego, a little uncharacteristic for them. And when they came back in night two, it was an absolute fantastic match. And it was interesting. All of the first three sets, I think, had some really early commanding leads. Team got off to an early start and essentially created a gap that was a little bit difficult to recover from, and was able to maintain that. And it was back and forth. And then we got to the fifth set, and man, it was some really, really great volleyball. And I felt like the service pressure from Grand Canyon was just a little bit more than San Diego's. But when it came down to it, I think it was like 17 all. There was a moment in the match where maybe I'm a big West homer, but I thought for sure we were taking it home. And I know for sure Brad was feeling the same way. And Leo, what's his last name? Pravendikov. He was fantastic. Played a really, really great match. Hit 360, 21 points, top point scorer for the Tritons. And I thought he really, really did a great job. And you're that close. It's just a couple of plays. It's a couple of moments. A net call, a double, whatever it may be, can be the difference. And it's unfortunate that San Diego lost that one, because I thought they really played great.
All right, Dan.
I was going to be curious to see how Grand Canyon responded with the Worley news and the coaching staff and how that kind of played all into it. But so compliment to that group and the coaching staff and everything, just being able to kind of keep the team moving where it needs to, and credit to them and their competitiveness. And so that was great to see from that standpoint. And certainly, sorry, Brad, it's always a tough loss in 5, so I know that. But I haven't got to go back and watch the match. I got to see some stats and look it up. And so I'm eager to kind of watch that match a little bit. So I'm probably go back and watch a little bit. But these guys said a lot about it. You look at some of the stats on some of the guys, especially night 2, and it was a slugfest back and forth for sure.
Yeah. Well, Jared Anderson, Carter Rogers had a big night on night 2, but what stuck out for me watching the broadcast is Anthony Scherfon kept being referred to as Anthony Chiffon, which I was laughing because he essentially had gamma radiation and turned his Hulk mode on both nights. And I'm like, how can you call this guy Chiffon? This guy is actually the opposite of being a soft, cuddly type of thing that you put on your accessories or whatever. But great night for them all. On the Matt Worley issue.
I do not think you understand what that word means.
So Bonner would have been better, buddy.
Yeah. So I actually, the Matt Worley issue though, I responded to a post online, and I like you guys, you guys know him personally, and the decisions they're made to go over to Kansas, and someone had posted an opinion on why, and I just said, basically, when family's involved and an opportunity comes, you got to take it. And that's one of those things that you need to do. And he responded, and he was thankful, and he knows that all the guys on the screen, they know the situation, and you know what? God bless him. He's taking care of his family. He's in a great situation. And Matt Ulmer, great guy to play for. Ask any of his former players, any of his assistants. So, I mean, it made sense for the family. So, congratulations to Matt. Always good to hear from him. Bummed to not be able to see him, as all you guys are, during the men's season. But he's going to a big thing right now, and he's going to be commissioned to strengthen a program or develop a program with great staff, great family situation, and of course, the money doesn't hurt either. So, let's go into our next segment. Because one of those teams that we didn't mention that went to a 5-setter was a Wednesday night match at UC Irvine that I was at, but I don't like to talk about my matches. I like these guys talking about the matches. So I want to go with Dan on this one first, and we'll go the East Coast over towards Midwest, Midwest, East Coast, and then the two West Coast guys, because they get to see this team twice. So Dan, go for it.
Oh, it was a great match to watch, and at the end in that 5th game, back and forth. There were so many phenomenal plays. And Hino's phenomenal. Again, he's got to be a player of the year candidate. But then again, you got Nolan Flexen, who's just going OT on the block, deep in corners and moving the ball around. And Joe on some sets. He had a one-hand set that was just unbelievable. And I don't know, USC was great. Their middles were unstoppable for a little bit, and it was a phenomenal match. There were so many great moments with that, and certainly two teams that'll be playing for their conference championships at the end, I think, in terms of where they're headed and everything, and that's great.
Yep. Over to Jay.
First of all, you got to give kudos to the marketing department at UC Irvine. What's the front row called? Rodeo Drive? Is that the
Gucci Row?
What Gucci Row? Yeah, that's a fantastic marketing scheme. I think when you watch the end of the match, the response from both teams shows how hard they fought. UCI obviously celebrated like they had won a big time match, because they did, obviously. But USC looked dejected because they had chances, they had opportunities. And when they lost that, you could see how much it meant to them. USC is a team this year that is changing their personality. Their future is changing day by day. And it means something now. I don't want to say this flippantly because it's not true, but if you look in recent years when a match like that was lost, they kind of went, and they moved on to the next thing. You could see how much this affected them. And it's going to prove beneficial down the line because they're going to get better. USC is going to get better. They're a sleeper team this year from the standpoint from the beginning of the season, but do not sleep on them later on in the year, because they're a team of destiny, and it may be not this year, but it's soon. But this year, they're good players.
Yeah. All right, Brad, represent.
Yeah, I thought night one was really entertaining volleyball, and I think in my eyes, the match of the season thus far, which is exciting because I feel like we've said that 3 or 4 times already this year, which is a good sign for men's volleyball and the product. But yeah, I thought night one, it came down to Nolan Flexen got Irvine into the 5th set, and then that 5th set, Halir Heno kind of put the stamp on Irvine's night, and Joe Carlos did a great job of setting him and feeding him and getting him going. And then on the on the USC side, Jack Duker did a great job stepping in off the bench on the right side, filling in for Noah Roberts and really playing great and really helping them get to that 5th set as well. And Dylan Klein and Sterling Foley took some really nice big time swings, and Parker Tompkinson continues to play at a really high level, literally and figuratively, with what he's doing on the court out there. And then kind of looking at the series as a whole, with night 2 being a little less dramatic, I thought ultimately both teams served in at a really high rate, but ultimately Irvine's pressure from the end line ended up winning out. And you saw that with USC's passing really breaking down over the course of that second night, and Irvine's passing really continuing to maintain it. And just looking at some of the numbers and watching USC play early on in the year, with less aggressive serving, and serving in more and trusting that block defense, how does that hold up against a team like Irvine, who passed at such a high rate and had them in system almost 75% of the time? And we saw that good passing helps teams win volleyball, which is a shocking concept.
And then Theo.
Yeah, obviously I agree with everything that these guys have said, and that fifth set was ridiculous. I mean, I don't remember ever seeing a fifth set quite like that, and going that far. And where did it go to, Rob? What were the final numbers of it?
26-24.
Okay.
USC served for 8 match points, and Irvine served for 4 of their own.
Yeah, I mean, so as far as the entertainment value, I mean, it was everything you'd ever hope for. One of the things I thought was interesting that stood out, Hilaire Heno and Nolan Flexen took 103 swings. If you're a coach and you're going to go up against Irvine, and you knew before the match started, hey, these two guys, two of the best in the country, are going to take 100 swings. Good luck. You'd be really concerned about what that's going to feel like and how your team's going to respond. And I mean, Flexton hit 412 on 52 sets. I mean, that's unbelievable. It's going to be really, really tough to beat a team like that. And I felt like the fact that USC was in the mix at that point in the match tells you a lot about them and what they're capable of. And I thought in night one, the passing wasn't great, but Caleb Blanchette did a fantastic job of keeping the middles going. And one of the keys of success for them has been his ability to run the middles from off the net and keep them involved, especially when the passing went down. And then you saw Guy Ganes get hurt, right? Tweaked himself a little bit. And to me, it felt like from that point on, even though he ended up playing the next night, he didn't look the same. The passing really broke down in the second match that they played that week. And without the middle offense for USC, it just felt like Irvine was a much better team. They passed incredibly well, and their libero Aitken, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he is the real deal, and one of the top passers, I think, on the West Coast here. So really, really impressed by what they were doing, and I think when it's all said and done, when the moment is big for Irvine, Hilaire Heno reminded us that he's that dude.
That dude. Do you guys see Matthew Houlihan's post after breaking down the matches? He coined the term Hilaire Heno. He's just too French, and that's why they're going to win. I'm like, can someone define what too French means?
It means gold medal, Rob. That's what it means.
Well, I was going to name some unsung heroes in that matchup because they stuck out. Yes, there's Dylan Klein, Jack Duker, and Noah Roberts, and you have Hilaire Heno and Nolan Flexen. But you have to point out the play of Johnny Dykstra, the libero for USC, was phenomenal, getting touches and great in serve receive. And Caleb Blanchette, whenever they were out of system, he found a way to get a one-hand dish that was perfect out to Klein and created quite the highlight reel. On the Irvine side, you did mention Shane Aitken, but Joe Carlos, Wednesday night was 4 matches in a row. He had double-doubles, assists, and double-digit digs. So he's been playing some really good ball, and although teams try to exploit the block on his side, he makes up in other ways in leadership and getting those other, I guess, those unstatted categories, because he's just one of those guys on the court that makes a big difference when it comes to running the floor. So great ball by those guys, and definitely you will be seeing these teams in the postseason. With that, the number one team comes back after playing UCLA on Friday night the previous week. It was kind of a weird home, but Long Beach State now goes to UCLA, takes a 3-0. Wanted to get your take on it. We'll start with, let's go with Theo. We'll go backwards this time.
Sure. Yeah, I think all of us were pretty excited for this matchup, right? After seeing them kind of go toe to toe and the week before, and it seemed to me that Long Beach is just the better team, and a lot of that they proved it. I think we talk about this almost every single week, but they have a setter that is just absolutely different, and Moni is is incredibly special. He hit a serve, I think, that was clocked at 84.
That is correct. I verified. I found the video that showed the radar gun showing the 84 on the screen.
I mean, I've been doing this a long time, not as long as two other guys on this screen, but I don't know that I've ever seen 84. And I hope that if I do, it's from our guys, not from the other team. But yeah, Long Beach is a really, really talented team, and I think when you're the number one team, you've got a little bit of a target on your back, and to come in against a team like UCLA and really show up and prove to the rest of the country why you're number one, it's pretty impressive, and that's what they did.
All right, Brad.
Yeah, I think for me, it's ultimately, over the course of the series and specifically the match this week, offensively, both teams were pretty even, but Long Beach had all three pins firing. And UCLA, Cooper Robinson was amazing, spectacular. He had 16 kills and played at a really high rate, but the other pins just not quite as effective for them. And just over time, Long Beach's blocking defense, I thought the volleyball was pretty steady and pretty consistent on both sides. But just when it got down to it, the last 5-10 points or so, the block would get a little touch, or the defenders for Long Beach would get a dig and allow Nikolov to go take a swing or to set the D ball. And I thought that ultimately was the difference. Just one or two real points late in the sets forced UCLA to try to be a little too perfect and make a hitting error. But I thought, despite it being a sweep, I thought it was pretty good volleyball on both sides. But just Long Beach was a little cleaner in the tighter moments.
Yep. Jay.
84 miles an hour. What are we doing? That is absolutely stupid. They're the only undefeated team left, correct, Rob?
No, there's two, Irvine and Long Beach State.
Oh, Irvine and Long Beach State. I can't wait for that matchup when it happens. It's going to be, I'm interested to see just who's going to have the stones to be able to make that happen. Here's the cool thing for me. Shaponis, who used to be the stud on that team that everybody was talking about, is now a role player. And he's taken that job and running with it. He's a little spark plug, he's running around the gym and he's firing people up, but he's not the main guy that they're all talking about. And for him, managing that expectation, managing that ego, if you will, and allowing him to just be the guy that, puts the balls down. I don't know what the numbers were, but I know his attacking attempts were not nearly as high as they normally are. And some other guys are getting more attempts, but he's doing a really nice job. And so, yeah, it's going to be a dogfight between Irvine and Long Beach. I can't wait for that matchup. I wish it was happening today, but unfortunately it's not. But yeah, Long Beach, dumb. They're just dumb.
Well, just so you know, the Long Beach Irvine matchup closes out Big West Conference play. So
one of the things we got to make sure we mention too, looking at the stats, Moni Nikolov leads that team in digs. And like, it's one of those things that, like, talking
what
to
category doesn't he lead in? Digs, blocks, aces.
But the other stuff's not surprising, right? But for the youth of the volleyball community listening, to really put it in perspective, in order to be great, you got to care about all of it, right? Like you can't just be a guy who, I like running the offense and I don't really care about blocking, or I like running the offense, but I don't really want to be an offensive setter. This guy's setting the stage, and the ability to lock in and be a great defender is incredibly impressive when it comes from a coach's perspective.
In 25 years, Dan, I was going to say 50, but Dan and I might not be around at 50, but in 25 years.
Hoping I'm around at 25. So.
Yeah, I do too. In 25 years, we're going to wax poetic about this one great player that we all remember seeing, and kids are going to look at us and go, duh. Like it's the Karch Karai moment, right? Because we all talk about Karch Karai, and some of our kids nowadays do not understand the legacy and the way that guy played. But I mean, Moni is he's going to be that guy. It's folkloric.
Yep. I forgot where we're at. We're at Dan now. We going back to the West. We're going.
No, I'm the last one. But Jay, that you say that, I mean, I think if there's a handful of 18-year-old VNL guys that if they came and played in the NCAA, that's what we would see. And Nikolov's special, don't get me wrong, but there's a handful of those guys. They stepped into our league. You'd see some 80-mile-an-hour bombs being served and just some ridiculous stuff. So I think we're blessed to have him for a short period of time because we all know it won't be that long in terms of that. But
So we hope.
As the social media blew up last week in terms of whatever he was doing. So I think it was a steady match, but I think Long Beach, here's the thing that's interesting with like Long Beach. We played him early in the year and thought we had a good battle with him, but they have some pieces that are just getting better. You look at the middles with Nikolov, you look at just how the pieces are developing, and I say this compared to maybe Irvine, Rob, where the pieces are have been there a little bit longer, and where is their overall improvement going to be, and where is Long Beach's improvement? So, not saying that Long Beach will be better than Irvine or Irvine will be better because I think it'll be a great match, but you're kind of seeing the development of these pieces. The middles had no errors and 10 kills in this second match.
Yep.
And so you talk about, Vargas on the other outside, and it's just like all these pieces that are developing with them, along with Nikolov getting used to playing collegiate volleyball. But here's the question I posed at the group. If you had to pick a player of the year today, Hino or Nikolov? Or is there somebody else that's thrown into the mix?
Parker Van Buren. I
Okay.
throw it out there.
It's
Throw it out there,
Nikolov.
PPP.
Nikolov.
It's Nikolov.
Yeah.
I am not on that boat yet. I think Hino is
Dan.
pretty special. So
I'd also say
Eno doesn't
Keone
lead
would be in
team
the
points.
mix of that conversation as well. But
Who?
Keone Thim. I think those would be the top four. I agree those other three are a little bit higher.
I don't know about top 4, maybe top 10. I don't know about that. I'm just saying he's bad. That's not what I'm saying. But
I just wanted to throw some controversy out
Nikolov.
there.
Of
It's
course.
Nikolov. You've been hanging out with Ryan Perrott too much because we had this conversation in Vegas.
Dan,
No way.
I think Nikolov is only about 20 or 30 points shy of Heno. Points.
Well, we'll see when they play, right?
And Long Beach has one more match than Irvine right now because Long Beach is 11-0, Irvine is 10-0.
Yeah.
So,
When is that? I'm sure you've got it starred in front of you right now, Rob. When do they play?
Oh, I know because it's the very last weekend of Big West play, and then it's
so
first
that
at
means-
Irvine.
That means they haven't even started it yet, so it's going to be a while.
It's going to be a while.
So at least 5 weeks away, at least.
If they're both undefeated when that match happens, I suggest to every coach around the country, cancel your match for that evening and watch that match.
They don't get to chime in on Long Beach State's week with UCLA on Wednesday, and they had a match against Vanguard 3-0 to close out the week. So if we're done, I know Brad's got to take off here in like 5 minutes, but that means it's time for the players of the week. Actually, I wanted to touch up on, I think the only people we didn't talk about teams are Jay and Theo. So always want to give you guys that opportunity for being the weekly contributors. If you want to just touch up on what you guys did this week.
Go ahead,
Jay.
Yeah, we picked up 2 wins against Sacred Heart, who's a much improved team. They're finally getting some support scholarship wise, which helps them out. They had a couple of players on the team that I thought did some nice jobs. They have a Hawaii transfer named Austin Buchanan, who is their setter, big kid, 6'9". Distributes the ball really well. They have an opposite named Jared Pop, Jared Pop does a really nice job. Good live arm. And they got another European got transferred from Hawaii in their opposite, or one of their outside hitters, a lefty, 6'7" lefty. They're a good program, and I'm interested to see what they do down the line. But we got them both times, felt good about our performance, and our setter, Troy McDonald, surpassed the 2,000 assist mark, which is pretty cool as well.
Yep. Good stuff. Theo.
Yeah, we only had one match this week, played against Jessup University. It was one of those weeks for us where, in the midst of wintertime and everyone gets sick. So we had the flu come through, and I think half our team missed most of the week in terms of training. And going into the weekend, we were we were excited to play, but we were kind of running on fumes a bit. So we kind of started with a different lineup, but ended up playing pretty well and ended up coming out with a victory. But I got to give Jessup some credit, and that roster. I was talking to the coach, and I'm drawing a blank on his name as we speak right now.
Steele.
What's that again, Brad?
Kyle Steele.
Kyle, yeah. We were talking. He was supposed to be, or at least it was communicated to him that they were going to be in the MPSF. And so when he first got the job, it was kind of like talking about scheduling. What are we going to do? He at least thought he had half of his schedule done and was only going to have to map out the other half. It didn't end up working out that way. And so he was kind of thrown into the fire in terms of trying to scramble and find matches. And in addition to that, he built the roster in 4 months. And to give credit where credit is due, I mean, he's done a fantastic job. And this team has a couple of both the opposite and the outside. Dupay is the opposite, Carter Dupay, and Jan Lapouche is the outside. And both of those guys can absolutely put some heat on the ball and are really, really good volleyball players. So I'm excited to see where Jessup goes, where they finish this year and what Kyle has a chance to do with that group in years to come, because I think that's a really, really good program, and he's doing a great job.
Wow, good stuff. All right, so with that, Brad, player of the week or players?
Yeah, it's I'm gonna go lefties here. We got Halir Heno and Shane Wetzel.
All right, Ohio State, UC Irvine represented. Go over to Dan, his player of the week. Players.
Well, I'm gonna go to Nolan Flexen and Nathan Flater.
Oh, Flater, back-to-back weeks. Jay.
I thought you were going to steal my lefty. Jared Anderson, 19 kills, 1 air, 474 against the old Fighting Tritons.
Fighting Tritons. There we go. And then Theo.
Sorry, Brad, but I got to go Carter Rogers, who I thought had a really great match against UCSD. And then I think I'm going to have to throw in the Aiken, the libero from UCI. He was fantastic. He was fantastic. I thought he passed incredibly well and kept those guys in system and made it look easy.
All great calls. And I think, Brad, are you have to jump off or what you're watching? Because I think we're all going to say a lot of the same matches. I have to limit you guys to one because there's some on the radar here, maybe two. So hit your match of the week. And if you need to go, jump off.
I'm going Ohio State McKendree. See if McKendree stays hot. But it's going 5 sets, that's for sure.
All right.
See you guys.
See ya.
Catch you later, Brad. Off to practice he goes. And then let's go to Dan. What are you watching this week?
I just get one. Is that what you're telling me?
One or two. I mean, because I went through, I'm like,
you got UCLA and UCI. And
on ESPN Plus Wednesday night, in case you guys are wondering.
Canyon and Seesaw.
Oh, there we go. And Jay, bobbing in delight.
Well, I got to get my sponsorships out. Sponsored by Chronic Tacos, who is owned by Wee Man of Jackass fame, if you're not familiar. That's the UCI-UCLA matchup I want to see. Sponsored by Rudy Rudiger. McKendree versus Ohio State and Ball State. That is going to be an absolute battle. I would not be surprised to see McKendree go 2-0. And then the last ones I'm going to watch, all the other EIBA matches, Sacred Heart versus Charleston, or Harvard, Princeton versus Charleston, Penn State versus NJIT. They are all going to be battles, and I can't wait to watch all of them.
Jay, you're the off week for EIBA then? Because you only have one.